Head over to miniaturemarket.com, play thousands of board games at discounted prices like Wonderbook. Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. You're about to see my Allegro 1-minute overview and final thoughts. This is designed to see if this game warrants more of your time. If it does, just keep watching because then you'll see my full intro overview and final thoughts. However, if you don't want to be spoiled anything and you want to skip right to the full review, use the time index below in YouTube. Wonderbook is a pop-up book adventure game for 1 to 4 players where each of you will select one of these cute little characters that comes with their own miniature. And these are actually huge miniatures with a ton of detail. The game is 6 chapters, which are 6 different games that you'll go through with lots of choose your adventure and a lot of exploration and cards to look at. Like, many times you'll be choosing for a specific way to go. And those will do all sorts of different things, like having you write down specific keywords or even erasing them that change the game depending on what you've done this game, even for future games. You might be using the back of the book to move around, move and attack worms, or pick up specific sparks. Maybe you'll be interacting with certain spots on the board depending on the card that's there that matches it, and certain things happen when you reveal those and interact with them. You'll be rolling dice to attack and using special abilities on different characters. After all the players act, the worms are going to act on the enemy phase, spawning out new ones and taking different actions as well. But the coolest part of this whole game is the book. Once it opens up, there are so many different things to interact with. The storytelling's amazing, and wow, this is the most unique game I think I've ever played from the adventure side of things. Wonderbook is probably the most fresh and unique adventure style game I've ever played. Has great art, has streamlined mechanisms, a great balance between mechanisms and story. The story and the writing is great. You're gaining and losing different keywords that affect you in this specific adventure, but also future adventures. You're getting upgrades for your character, choosing which upgrade you want, then getting more and more and having them stack over adventures. You're choosing your adventure as you go through, and those choices are always really interesting. You're also interacting with different cards around the board, which are cool, but you're also, the best part is interacting with the pop-up book. It's the coolest thing ever, what they've figured out how to do this with. It scales well with players. On the negative side of things, once you've opened up certain things, they don't quite lay flat anymore. Minor nitpick. And putting the cards back in order takes a little long at the end of the adventure, especially since some of them, not all of them, will go back in there. But overall, this is a fantastic family adventure game. A unique breath of fresh air. Wonderbook. Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today we're going to be diving into the pages of a book. And this book is going to take you on an amazing adventure. It's a pop-up book adventure game, something I've never experienced before, with a huge tree that comes out of it. Today we're taking a look at Wonderbook. Let me show you how it's played. I'll see you on the other side. In Wonderbook, it's an adventure game where you'll select one of these cute little characters. They each have their own miniature. They have their own little biography of like what they're about. And then each one of them is going to have certain type of attacks and some skills, and you'll be able to upgrade them over time and things like that. Now here's what the miniatures look like at table level for the 4 different kids and the bad guys on the left there. That is known as a worm. And let me show you a close-up of some of these. Now the game is played over 6 different chapters, each one of them being sort of its own game, but there's going to be a story that's arching through the whole entire thing. In the first chapter, you'll just actually be playing on the back of the book. And we have the starting characters here. We have some of the bad creatures here. They're known as worms. And you'll go through a story learning what you're supposed to be doing as the game goes on. Now many times throughout the game, now I'm not going to spoil anything, but there's many times where you'll have these choices to make. Like, hey, this tells you, you're looking for a way out and you'll think it'd be worthwhile to explore the secret chamber more deeply. Do you think it's best to try to either unravel the arcane secrets of this place or look for something valuable? Then you'd flip the card. I'm not going to flip this, but different things will do different things. I'll show you a randomized card that's not this one. For example, on a differently randomized card, this might say, read the outcome of your choice. Did you select yes or no? And then you'll read a story based upon what you've selected. And then it might have you do different things, like adding or erasing certain keywords that you'll be keeping track of. And those keywords are going to change what happens in the story, both this chapter and even in future chapters. Now, each chapter deck is in specific order. You don't look through them. You go one at a time. You flip them over. Sometimes it will give you new rules. Sometimes it will give you the setup. All sorts of things. It'll get you right into the game. You just follow the rules on the card. It's very easy. Now, generally speaking, there's a player's phase and then an enemy's phase. And the players are all working together. This is cooperative. And you're going to be trying to do different things based on the story and things like that. There's different things you can do on your turn. You get 3 actions on your turn. And during the player's phase, you get to decide which player acts in which order. So it's flexible in that way. Now, sometimes you might move. And if you move to an adjacent spot. Moving over any of these dotted dashed lines, you can't move over any of the solid lines there. So now that I'm here, another action I could take is to attack. Now that was this character here. Each character starts with a certain amount of life. If you ever lose all your life, you get knocked out, which is a bad thing. And if you get knocked out on a future turn, you can stand back up, get all your health back, but you'll flip one of these timers down. If this ever gets all the way gone, you've lost it. But certain things are going to allow you to flip them back up depending on what you do and what choices you make. And at the end of the chapter, if you make it there, you'll be able to actually get a certain score depending on how many are still face up. Now back to attacking. His attack is bash. You roll 2 dice and you choose 1 worm in your area. For each hit here, you deal 1 damage. Now this is about 50% of the time on the dice, so I rolled these 2 and I got this. If you want to re-roll all of them, you can once per turn remove 1 of your health and re-roll the dice like that, the ones that you want. So here, let's just say we got 1 hit. So if we hit him once, he would lay down and he would be stunned like that. Now, if we hit him again, we spent another action to roll the dice. Maybe we spent a health to re-roll the X's. Again, you can only do that once per turn. But if we hit him again, then he's gone and we have destroyed him. Now, if you damage a worm, now once all the players have done all their actions, if there's still worms that are damaged, meaning they haven't been completely killed yet, you're going to select a card, to random one to bring out, and certain things are going to happen, like new worms are going to spawn in in that spot on the board. And this tells you if there's 3 or 4 players, you'd spawn a second one. But then they could do different actions. These things do all sorts of different things. For example, if it was laying down on the board, each one is going to activate twice. Once would be standing up, and once would be like moving towards another player or attacking if they're in the same spot as them. And each of the worms on the board are going to do that. So most of the time, if you have not taken care of somebody, you've only stunned them, they probably will end up standing up with the card that comes up in the enemy's phase. Now this specific card, we would put 1 new worm out in the middle in the vortex there, but then in this phase, if there's no hero in the same space as the activated worm, that worm attacks a hero in an adjacent area. So this is a specialist card. They all sort of do a little bit different things, but this essentially is adding 1 worm, and then each worm is going to activate twice, but now they can attack in an adjacent area as well. These cards do all sorts of different things, and more cards will come out and be shuffled into this deck as the adventures go on. Now over the course of the game, there's going to be different sparks that come out in different areas, and if you're in a spot with a spark, you can take an action to pick it up. And those are really cool because you can spend them to do different things. Like this skill is I can spend 1 to choose another hero. They gain a spark and can immediately perform an action right away. That's really cool. Now let's look at this one. This one is you roll 1, and if you deal a hit, 1 damage to a worm in your area or an adjacent area because they have the arrow. So they can hit from 1 away, and if you do hit that way, 1 hero of your choice can recover a heart. Really cool. This one is if they spend a spark, they get to roll 3, and for each damage, they deal 1 damage to 1 different worm on the board anywhere, because she's going around, but she has not as much health. So those are different ways that you can use sparks. Now over the course of the game, you're going to find cards that you could possibly interact with, and if you're in the spot that's closest to on the board, you can spend an action to interact with that, flip it up, and see what it does. All sorts of different things are going to happen in this game. It's really cool. Now those are the very basics of the game. I can't really show you a whole lot more without spoiling anything. All I can tell you is that the things that happen in this game are some of the coolest I've seen in any little family adventure game. So let's take a look at what happens when the book opens up. Now this is not a spoiler because even on the back of the box it shows this book opened up. However, I am not going to show you anything that I've interacted with already on this board because there are a ton of different things that you're going to be able to interact with on this board in ways that you didn't expect. And it's part of the coolest part of this game is the exploration of this book. There's so many things that can happen in here, all the little things. I'm just not going to spoil anything, but it is the coolest thing around. I'm not going to show my biases right up front. I'm not typically a person that really enjoys a lot of adventure style games. Going around, rolling dice, killing things, not usually my thing. However, I do tend to like choose your own adventure style things. So there's that. I just want to put that up front. This is probably the most fresh and unique adventure game I've ever played, maybe. It's just such a breath of fresh air, something so different. I'm so tired of seeing the same old games over and over and over, same old themes. This is just so unique. I love it. It's absolutely going to be on my list, my short list to think about most innovative game of the year for sure. Plus, on top of that, the art is gorgeous. Yes, it's cartoony. Yes, it's sort of kid, but this is a family adventure game. It looks great. All of the art, you can see, it kind of looks spooky, but it's not too scary, but it just looks great. The game has streamlined mechanisms. Too many times you have these adventure games and you're rolling dice and you're doing skill checks and you're doing this and you're looking at this table over here and oh, I got this modifier over here and oh, by the way, we're on this terrain over here and oh, we're next to some window. No, very streamlined mechanisms. Move, roll, get things, interact with cards, that's about it. It's a great balance, in my opinion, between story and actions. Now, there's like two sides of this spectrum. Like, you might have like Tales of Arabian Nights, which is like all story, no mechanisms. And you might have things like Sleeping Gods, which is very story-driven. The story's amazing, but there's a lot of heavy mechanisms and battlings and things like that. This, I think, did a great job of balancing. I feel like I'm playing a game, but I also feel like I am controlling where I'm going and I'm loving the story and finding a way. The story and the writing's great. It is, it is for kids and children and families. But I enjoyed it. It was fun. The writing's good, so that's a good plus always in an adventure game. I like that you're sort of gaining and losing keywords based on actions. Keywords is not a new thing in adventure games or anything like that. I know Seventh Continent did it in a great way that I liked. This one was really interesting because, again, not only is it messing with you or changing of what happens in this adventure, but it's changing things in future adventures too, which is pretty cool. And I like the fact that you have something there and you might make a decision that actually makes you remove one of your keywords and give you a new one. And that's just really cool because it has all these branching paths in the story of different things that might happen. I didn't show you this in the overview of any of these, but over the course of the game, you are going to get upgrades with your character. And you get to decide which side that upgrade goes on. They're different choices. And over the course of adventures, you might be getting more of these, and they sort of stack, meaning you get this and this and this, and your characters become more powerful over the adventures, and that's really cool too. I love this sort of choose your own adventure style choices. I told you at the beginning, I love those style of things. And these ones do it great here too. It's just such a really good thing. It's done really well, I should say. Of course, the main attraction to this game for many is going to be interacting with the pop-up book. And the cards are on that book. Even interacting with some of these cards is really cool. They do certain things. You look at the cards, you might be able to tell what you think it's going to do, but you're never quite sure. But interacting with the pop-up book, I've never played a game like this before. I didn't know what to expect, and I've got to say, you might say, oh, that's a gimmick. I guess it depends on what your definition of gimmick is. But for me, yes, maybe it's a gimmick, but it works. And it actually envelops you into the story. Everything you're interacting with is thematic with what's going on. It's just amazing. Interacting with the pop-up book is the best part of this game. And it also scales well with the different player counts. 3 or 4 players, the enemy cards do different things. They make it a little harder, things like that. On the negative side of things, once you pop open that book and you interact with a new thing you haven't done before, it never quite will lay entirely flat again. You can kind of if you open it up, you're like, oh, that must be something. Now, I don't think that's a big deal because it's not really a secret as to what things you're going to interact with, because you can clearly look at the book and go, oh, there's a tab over there. Oh, this looks like it might move over here. You can kind of already tell what's possible, but you don't know exactly what it will do. And even after you put it away, if it's still sticking up a little bit, you still can't tell what it does. So it's a minor nitpick. I wish they would have given maybe a tiny bit of little sticky something, like a sticky tab that you put, and you put it down to keep it really flat, but it's still if you interact with it, it's still strong enough that it will just do what it does. Again, very minor nitpick here. At the end, this was a big problem in Seventh Continent, where you go through all these numbered cards in order, and you're getting all these cards, you do this big adventure, and then the game ends, and you're talking about the adventure, which is fine, and then you gotta put those cards back in order. And in Seventh Continent, it was a nightmare. There was so many cards. This is a lot less of a problem because there's less cards per chapter. But sometimes when you're putting them back, you're trying to put them back in order, you're like, hey, where's number 20? We must have dropped it. Look under the table. Look over there. Oh, 20 was a card that we did something else with that I'm not going to say here because I don't want to spoil things. But there'll be cards that don't go back in the chapters, books. And you'll forget about that, and you'll be looking for cards. So putting things away at the end takes a little longer than I'd like. But again, that's a minor nitpick. This game is fantastic. If you're looking for a streamlined, story-driven, family cooperative adventure game that is probably the most unique thing that you've ever played, this is it. And for that reason, this is getting a Saxophone Serenade, which means I'm keeping this, which is tough because this is not typically a game that I would usually keep. And the box is pretty big. And when I keep a box, I gotta get rid of a box. I gotta find one of those bigger, grandiose games to get rid of because of this thing. I love it though. Wonder Book, check this one out. This is my Game Boy Geek, breaking down barriers, growing relationships through board games by helping you find the next one you'll love. Game Toppers not only transforms your existing table to a high-quality gaming solution, they now offer full leg kits and dining cover solutions for the full table application. Paired with their amazing, thematic, premium stitch edge mats from noted board game artists like Vincent Dutray, collapsible cup holders, and really cool accessories, it's a complete system that upgrades every game you play. Go to GameToppersLLC.com or click the link below.